One performs his duty without association. With the modes of material nature, without false with great determination and enthusiasm, and without wavering in success and failure, is said to be the worker of the mountains. A person in Krishna consciousness is always transcendental to the material modes of nature. He has no expectations for the result of the work entrusted to him, because he is above falsehood and pride. Still, he is always enthusiastic till the completion of such work. He does not worry about the distress undertaken. He is always enthusiastic. He does not care for success or failure. He is equal in both distress and happiness. Such a worker is situated in the moon of goodness. Yodho himsatmako suchihi harsha shobhanvita kartam rajasa parikirtan. The worker who is attached to work and the fruits of work, desiring to enjoy those fruits, and who is greedy, always envious, impure, and moved by joy and sorrow, is said to be more passion. A person is too much attached to a certain kind of work. Part of the result, because he has too much attachment for materialism, work and home, wife and children. Such a person is no desire for higher elevation in life. He is simply concerned with making this world as materially comfortable as possible. He is generally very greedy and he thinks that anything attained by him is permanent and never to be lost. Such a person is envious of others and prepared to do anything wrong for sense gratification. Therefore, such a person is unclean and does not care because the one thing is pure or impure. He is very happy if his work is successful, when he is distressed and his work is not successful. Such a work is in the mode of passion. Vishali creatures, Kritanasa Uchate. The worker who is always engaged in work against the injunctions of the scripture. Who is materialistic, obstinate, cheating, and expert in insulting others, and who is lazy, always morose and procrastinating, is said to be a worker that is more off in others. In the scriptural injunctions, we find what sort of work should be performed and what sort of work should not be performed. Those who do not care for those injunctions, engage in work not to be done, and such persons are generally materialistic. They work according to the modes of nature, not according to the injunctions of the scripture. Such workers are not very gentle, and generally they are always very cunning and expert in insulting others. Such workers, cunning and expert in insulting others, they are very lazy. Even though they may have some duty, they do not do it properly. And they put it aside to be done later on. Therefore, they appear to be very broad, they procrastinate. Anything which can be done in an hour, they drag on for years. Such workers are situated in the mode of ignorance. Now the interesting point is to note here is that are the modes decided by the worker by the worker? That's very interesting. When the modes get decided and fixed by the work or by the worker, if they get decided by the work, then what is the need to discuss the workers and frameworks? And if they get decided by the worker, then what is the need to discuss the work and frameworks? So last week was a work in 3 months, and this week is a worker in 3 months. So what decides the modes? The work or the worker? And if you see the verses 23-25, there is a good amount of intersection between the characteristics of the work and the worker. Is it just a repetition to emphasize? Or what is it? That's very interesting. Interestingly, both have their close value. So we cannot just say that it is just the attitude of the person who is acting. It is just the attitude of the person who is acting. That is what matters a lot. And based on that attitude, such a person is classified, and such activity is classified to be discretionary. So attitude plays a big role. In fact, even in the activities of Bhakti Yoga, the attitude is classified as what kind of missionary? Complete 3 modes. Which mode gets favored? It's the attitude. It's the golden mode. So when it comes to activity for Bhakti, there is only the attitude which plays it. Then we say that okay, if one is selfless, if one is not attached to the result, is ready to follow the instructions, is happy to do any favor to any people. So such is Bhakti in the world. But when is very fruitive, when is comparative, he wants to observe this time, but after that he wants main fame, glory, that's what we are more passion. And for one who is executing devotional service, with a critical attitude, he wants to pull others down. With a political mindset, diplomacy, political mindset. Such a person is a mode of ignorance. And obviously, the classic characteristic of mode of ignorance, procrastination, laziness. Sorry, question. Such practice of Bhakti Yoga is in the mode of ignorance. So when the activity is Bhakti Yoga, then we can say there is no, then let's just talk about the workers, the attitude of the workers. And that's how we can classify the modes. But when the activity is not exactly Bhakti Yoga, then the activity also has a certain environment, a certain mode along with associated with it. And the person who is having to do it also has a certain mode associated with it. That's the point. Like, say, for example, say, work in a factory, work in an institution, educational institution, work in a temple, yeah, work in a slaughterhouse. Each of these four have a certain mode associated with it. Have a certain mode associated with it. So, work in a slaughterhouse is 100% complete ignorance. Whereas a factory is in the mode of passion, education is in the mode of goodness, a temple is in the mode of ignorance. So now there are these activity in that sense have a certain mode associated with it. That's the point. Now the other point which comes out is that when a person or a worker comes with different attitudes, then he adds on a second level of variation. He adds on a second level of variation. Yes. 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 So that is a valid example. So like a teacher, an alcoholic teacher is drunk and he has come to teach. Now the activity was in the mode of goodness. This person has converted into now it's no goodness. It is going to be mode of egoism. So this attitude has overshadowed. So it's not goodness, it's ignorance. It's no more goodness. Although the activity had the vibe of goodness associated with it, but because the person very strongly brought about a particular mode, in that mode was called. So this goes to show that no, it's now that can happen. But there is no, but this is not a straight cut formula. Then you may say, okay, attitude of the person is most important. Now here again we have to be cautious because you see, if the person is in the mode of goodness, now means okay, person is mode of goodness, and he is going to now an area or a field or a work which is in the mode of ignorance. Then what is going to happen? What is going to overpower? It will be full ignorance. Why it will be full ignorance? Because a person in mode of goodness or a worker who is having an attitude of goodness, he will never go to the slaughterhouse. He has no work to give and take with the slaughterhouse. Is that not? He has nothing to give and take with the slaughterhouse. So if he is going to slaughterhouse and he is working in a slaughterhouse for any reason, means as a buyer, as a seller, in any transaction in the slaughterhouse, he will definitely be affected by the mode of ignorance. Because what business he has in the slaughterhouse? Ramesh, okay, what about the mode of passion? So, worker in the mode of goodness will in general not land up into work in mode of passion. He will not land up in a factory. He may not prefer a factory. He may prefer an educational institute. Or he may prefer to work directly in the temple. Or he may just prefer to do some cultivation, have a small setup of his own. He will not go and work in a factory. But in an emergency situation, he may land up in a situation which is in the mode of passion. And thus, and in that situation, because of his prominent attitude of mode of goodness, he will be protected a bit. But again, this principle cannot be overstretched. No, this principle cannot be overstretched. Like one cannot say, "What can I do, Prabhuji?" No, I happened to land up in a party of my colleagues, and they were drinking and they were dancing on pop tunes and they were wearing 3/4, 1/4, 1/10, whatever. No? What can I do, Prabhuji? I happened to land up there. So this excuse is not going to be much valid. Why? Because this doesn't justify an emergency, is it not? This justify a willful choice. Now, nobody blind cuffed you and handcuffed and blindfolded you and dragged you to such an area, is it not? Rather, we have seen in company settings, superficially, externally, they say that okay, we give a lot of respect to your values. So if a person even once speaks that I have traditional Vaishnav values, they will not even invite. They'll say, "No, you don't have any role there. Better you will be miserable, we'll be miserable." No, no, the policeman is there, how the crime will happen. That's okay. You be in the police station, let us be in the crime field. You be peaceful, you be peaceful. Is it not? That's going to be the case actually. No. So, so that is why Raisham to say that actually the problem will not arise in general. The problem arises because of our own attachments and weak-heartedness. That we don't want to show that we don't want to show that we are a devotee. We want to cover it up and keep the devotee aspect only when you enter the temple. Till that time, I want to cover it up. Then it becomes a problem because we have not presented ourselves properly to people. So they think, okay, he is one among us. That's the point actually, which has to be understood. So therefore, the combination rules of these two, worker and work, are not very straight cut. Yeah. We cannot just say that okay, if worker and work, the work mode will overpower or the worker mode will overpower. It depends. Sometimes one overpowers, sometimes another overpowers. It depends. So definitely, as a thumb rule to say, when work is in the mode of ignorance, passion ignorance, the more down it is, the more degraded it is, the more it has the potential to overpower. And when the work is in the mode of goodness, then the worker will overpower. The attitude, the mentality of the worker will overpower. That's just a rule of thumb. So anyhow, quite interesting. Now, there is an interesting point here. The interesting point is, you see, very amazing.
So you just read the translation. We just go through the translation of 26. And Prabhupada is translating, one who performs his duty without association of the modes of material nature. So without false ego and with great determination and enthusiasm and without wavering in success failure, such a worker is mode of goodness. The interesting point is, now here we are discussing a worker in three modes, and one of the characteristic qualification for a worker in the mode of goodness is that such a worker he performs his duty without association with modes of material nature. Interesting, no? So how can a mode of goodness is performing the duty without associating with any of the modes? Because if he is not associating with any of the modes, then how is he goodness? Is it not? It's quite interesting. So, and therefore, Prabhupada is giving a very direct translation. Prabhupada is giving very direct purpose. Prabhupada begins in full style. Prabhupada says, therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness is transcendental to the material modes of nature. The person Krishna consciousness is transcendental to modes of material nature, and then he is without false ego and he's enthusiastic and he doesn't care for success, failure, he's equipoised and all that. And then Prabhupada is concluding the purport of such a person is in the mode of goodness. And if his Krishna consciousness transcendental to the modes, and then we have qualified, and then how he came in the mode of goodness? Quite interesting. So are goodness and pure goodness equivalent? Because as it's being described here, actually. So this is quite interesting. You see, the reason is, you see, the setting of this world is a very dynamic setting. Because the setting of this world is a very dynamic setting, therefore things have to be considered in that respect. That's why nothing is static in this world. And things are very dynamic. And other thing is that there is friction in this world. Materially, mentally, everywhere this friction exists. That means there is a degrading force in this world. And that exists in any setup, in any activity. So that's why it is just like, when you're driving a vehicle. Nah. So if you want to drive at a speed 40, if one has to drive at a speed 40, uh, he has to continuously keep giving the accelerator. No, keep giving the accelerator raise. Now we may say, why to give the accelerator raise if you want a speed constant? Because there is friction. So if you don't ensure that the race, then the speed will go down. The decline curve will happen. The 40 will go down. Sorry. To maintain 40, acceleration has to be given. Is it not? So this is an interesting point. The point is to ensure that one lands up in the mode of goodness, he has to aim higher. Like Papa said, na, you chase for a rhino, at least you'll get a goat. You chase for a goat, you'll get a rabbit. If you chase for rabbit, you'll get a rat. If you chase for rat, you'll get an ant. So, so what to aim for? So Prabhupada didn't say that, okay, you were aiming for a rhino, you didn't got rhino, out of job. Prabhupada said, no. After aiming and chasing a rhino, even if you catch a rat and come back, devotees will glorify you. Hari Bol Prabhu. The devotees are always like that. encouraging. So this is the interesting point actually. That the aiming for the rhino, but then you get a goat or you get a rat. That is fine. But the point is, if we aim for a rhino, at least the rat will be insured. So therefore, if a worker in the mode of goodness, he aims for going beyond the mode, then at least he'll be able to maintain his status of goodness. But if he aims for goodness, then he will go much down. Is it not? That's the point. And that's why Prabhupada is telling a person Krishna conscious. So person in Krishna conscious not necessarily beyond the modes. Is it? But he's trying to go beyond the modes that will ensure that he will remain in goodness at least. Because he's trying and desperately trying to go beyond the modes. So at least goodness will be ensured. That's the point. So this is the ensuring criteria. That aim for beyond the goodness. Strive for beyond the goodness. Now the other point is when we hear these criteria of the goodness, we may say, oh, these are very transcendental criteria. You see, he is beyond success, failure. Now he is beyond self-ego also. No? Great determination. Then why are we calling it as goodness? Because these are very transcendental qualities. Is it not? You see, without any selfishness, ego, what more is required? Then? Is it not? So the primarily distinguishing factor why this is mode of goodness is because the focus of loving offering to Krishna is not explicitly present. Is it not? The focus of loving reciprocation to Krishna is not explicitly present here. Is it not? And unless that happens, how can it be beyond goodness? Is it not? So this goes to show actually that goodness is, see how it is. Passion and ignorance, if we give the analogy of water body, passion and ignorance is like drowning. Passion and ignorance is like drowning. Goodness is like floating. So one has been able to overcome the drowning forces. So it's floating. The actual swimming and adventure starts beyond the moons. Is it not? That's the point. Floating not much fun, no? Is it not? Is there? I don't think so. Right? Floating there is not much fun. But if you're swimming, there's a lot of fun, is it not? It's quite active. Yes, so when we don't give exclusive and topmost priority to Krishna, that means priority is being given to material desires. Then it is mode of passion, and that will glide down to mode of ignorance. See, goodness will come when goodness comes when one is actually wanting to negate the material factors. He is striving and struggling for that. But he has not understood and caught and got attracted towards loving devotional service. The vector is towards that only, high. He wants to get out of this material entanglement. Such a person is only in the mode of goodness. But somehow